Thank you for joining us for this webinar on the cosmetics registration under China's new regulatory framework.
In this webinar, Cisema will explore and explain the ins and outs of how to file or register your cosmetics products in China in light of the new cosmetics regulations. Just a few administrative points as we start. This webinar will last for approximately 1 hour with around 50 minutes presentation followed by 10 minutes Q&A at the end. Please feel free to type your questions into the question box, the chat box, as they come to you during the webinar, and we will address them live with one of our colleagues, Jeff, and we will also explain in more detail at the end with any other questions and answers. Today, we will, as Anna mentioned, be delighted to share a basic understanding of the cosmetics filing and registration process in China and have an interactive session with our participants. We will focus, of course, on the most recent CSAR, a special cosmetics regulation. Let's move forward. First, we would like to present to you Cisema, our company. Cisema stands for China Service Management, and we are a regulatory affairs consultant for China, founded in 2002 in Munich, Germany, and Beijing, China, by a former Siemens engineer. We now have 12 worldwide offices with nearly 100 employees, most of those on the ground in China, and we're 100% China focused.
And my name is Anna. I've been working for Cisema since 2013 and assist cosmetics companies experience a smooth and efficient registration process in China. I've been holding webinars and seminars in association with trade organizations and chambers of commerce around the world.
And I'm Hamish. I'm a lawyer by training, admitted in New South Wales, Australia, and in Hong Kong, which has been my home for the last 6 years. I'm COO at Cisema.
And our dear colleague Jeff, he is based in Beijing. He's the team leader of Cosmetics Regulatory Affairs. He will be answering the questions which you can post in the chat during the entire webinar, and he will also join us for the Q&A session at the end. By the way, Hamish and I, we are currently speaking to you from Hong Kong.
So let's begin. The first thing to start with, of course, is the regulator itself. The National Medical Products Administration, despite having medical in the name, in fact, regulates cosmetics in China. It has gone through a convoluted history in the last 25 years or so, starting with the State Drug Administration, then the State Food and Drug Administration, more recently the CFDA, and now the NMPA since 2018, when it went through quite a substantial restructure. The NMPA regulates not only cosmetics, but also medical devices, IVDs, and pharmaceutical products. The former CFDA used to regulate even more products, including health food, as well as infant formula and food for special medical purposes. But those items in grey on the slide are now regulated, in fact, by the SAMR and the CFE, that's the Centre for Food Evaluation, within the State Administration for Market Regulation. So, what is the new regulation for cosmetics in China? It is called the Cosmetic Supervision and Administration Regulation, the CSAR. It is a top-level law under which there are various and multiple supporting regulations. 3 highlighted on the box in our slide here in the white boxes are the administrative measures on cosmetic registration and filing, the administrative measures relating to manufacture and operation, and one relating to toothpaste. Now that is included separately because toothpaste is not considered a cosmetic, but it is still regulated under the CSAR. In more detail, on the left-hand side of the slide, we have the more specific guidelines which support and give content to the broader top-down and supporting administrative measures and laws. We have also set out on the slide whether these guidelines are yet implemented or in draft stage, and whether they are still to be released or in draft. So this gives you a general picture that the regulatory framework relating to cosmetics has substantially moved forward since implementation of the top-level law, but it is not still yet finalized, and there are a number of drafts still to be issued. That can sometimes be confusing to people because the top-level law is in place, so why isn't everything in place? Actually, the way it often works in China is they start, being a centralized country, of course, they start with a top-level law, and then they effectively ask the regulator to then fill out and give meaning and content and practical steps to those top-level laws. And so that's what's happening here.
With this slide, you will understand the transition arrangements of the CSAR, which means that different regulatory requirements will come into force at different times, depending on the product. So let's have a look. Since May this year, all new applications have to be submitted on the new platform. So the NMPA has created a new online registration and filing platform, and the old one is being rolled out. So you will have to apply for a new online account on there. Secondly, the source and trade name information and the product classification code of product formula of ingredients have to be supplied already when newly applying. For information, the classification code is made up of different information, including the efficacy claim, the applied part, the target user, dosage form, and the usage. From the 1st of January next year, safety-related information of functional ingredients such as preservatives, sunscreens, coloring, hair dyes, and whitening will need to be submitted when newly applying. Also, with regards to efficacy claims, you have to evaluate the efficacy claims and upload the summary of the evaluation onto the designated website. With regards to a product safety assessment report, this is a new requirement in China. The simplified version will be needed starting from 1st of January next year. For your information, maybe I'm taking a little bit something ahead already. We will be talking about animal testing later on, but if you want to avoid animal testing already now, you have to submit the product safety assessment report already now. All other products will have to submit this starting from January next year. Then there is a new annual report requirement for general cosmetics. And I have mentioned earlier already that you have to apply for a new online account on the platform. And some applicants are struggling to create the necessary documentations, including the overview of quality control system and the adverse reaction monitoring and evaluation system. And the NMPA allows you to supplement those two documents until a bit later, but you will have to supplement them eventually. Before the 1st of May in 2022, you have to supplement the product classification code for already approved products, and also supplement the evaluation of efficacy claims. And this is applicable for products that were registered between May and December this year. From 1st of January 2023, safety-related information of ingredients will need to be submitted when newly applying. And before 1st of May, not next year, in 2023, you have to supplement the safety-related information of ingredients of all approved products, and also supplement the evaluation of efficacy claims for products that were approved before May this year. And last but not least, the full version. So I've mentioned the product safety assessment report. The simplified version is required starting from January next year, but the full version has to be supplemented by May 2024. Now that I've given you an overview of the action timeline of the CSAR, I would like to take a step back and talk about the definition of cosmetics. Cosmetics in China refer to daily chemical industrial products applied to skin, hair, nails, lips, and other human surfaces by scrubbing, spraying, and other similar methods for the purpose of cleansing, beautifying, protecting, and modifying. For your information, soap in the past was not considered a cosmetics, and however now, with the introduction of the CSAR, if a soap has a special cosmetics claim, then this will also be regulated by the CSAR. With regards to toothpaste, Hamish mentioned it briefly already, toothpaste is not classified as a cosmetic, but nevertheless regulated by CSAR. It could claim the effects that I have listed here in this box, and toothpaste will have its own filing regulations, but we're still waiting for, there's a draft of a subsidiary regulation out already, but we're still waiting for some more information. The draft that's already out for toothpaste divides toothpaste into two groups of users, adults and children. Please note that child toothpaste products can only have basic cleaning and anti-decay functions.
So Anna has talked about what cosmetics are, and now we need to look at why that matters and what the classifications are. There are special or general cosmetics. Special cosmetics are specific intended claims or intended freckle removing, whitening, hair dyes, hair perming, sunscreens, anti-hair loss and products with new efficacy. General cosmetics are those that are not special cosmetics. And why this matters is because general cosmetics need to be filed, just go through a filing system, whereas special cosmetics have a registration system, which is a much more substantial timeline and documentary requirements. Here on this slide, we've just set out in broad outlines what those look like in terms of timeline for registration of special cosmetics. This takes approximately 14 to 18 months, and we're going to go into detail around that timeline. For filing, it takes 4 to 5 months by comparison and is wholly online. Registration, you receive a hard copy certificate and it's valid for 5 years. For a filing by comparison, it's all done online. It's issued, the certificate is issued electronically, and it has unlimited validity. Now, people that are familiar with the cosmetics regulatory environment will have noticed that the special cosmetics, that anti-hair loss was added, but some of the former special cosmetics claims were removed, and those I have included here on the right side. So from January 1st this year, the NMPA actually no longer considers hair growth, depilatory, so hair removal products, breast shaping, body slimming, and deodorants as special cosmetics. And any ongoing applications that were received before January 21 were terminated, and the NMPA actually no longer issues special cosmetic licenses for these products. However, the products that have successfully obtained the certificate can continue to produce, import, and sell in China during the transition period, which ends in December 2025. So if you have a special cosmetics product, you registered this before the CSAR was implemented, you can continue to sell them in China. Now I'd like to go into more detail with regards to the changes in supervision requirements for these previous 5 special cosmetics. Let's start with hair growth products. They are divided into 3 categories for supervision. There is general cosmetics, for instance, if they repair damaged hair through physical coverage to prevent hair breakage. Then there is drugs. This is if your product promotes hair growth by changing human body structure. And last but not least, special cosmetics, but then it's rather a anti-hair loss claim. With regards to depilatories or hair removal products, these are products with 2 mechanisms.
physical depilation and chemical depilation, and in future they will be regulated, or they as general cosmetics, so they will need to do a filing. With regards to breast shaping as well as body slimming, there are two possible categories: general cosmetics as well as drugs. So for instance, if these products achieve breast beauty or slimming functions by changing the circulation or the structure of the human body, then they would be considered as drugs. And last but not least, deodorants. Those products have three possible mechanisms, and they're classified as general cosmetics. Now, if they inhibit sweat secretion, if they regulate the microbial environment, or eliminate and cover odors. Please note, products that regulate the microbial environment can easily be confused with disinfection or sterilizing products. However, those do not qualify as general cosmetics. So only those products that do not claim to have an antimicrobial efficacy and whose use of ingredients comply with cosmetics regulation can be filed as general cosmetics. Now, before we introduce you to the filing and the registration procedures of general and special cosmetics, I'd like to tell you who is who. So who is the actual applicant? Here we talk about registrant and filers. Depending on whether you have to register your products or you file your products, you could talk about registrants or filers. And these are basically a company or an entity that launches the cosmetics product and bears civil liability. They are the ones that are responsible for product quality and safety. They have to have a QMS in place. They are responsible for the registration or the filing of the cosmetics. And Hamish is going to tell us another very important person.
The domestic responsible agent, the DRA. This entity is important because all foreign companies or non-Chinese companies must have a local Chinese entity that represents them before the NMPA in China. It must be a legal entity in mainland China. So what are the responsibilities of the DRA? They support filing and registration on behalf of the applicant. They do post-market obligations such as adverse reaction monitoring and recalls. They are the interface with the NMPA. They also do annual reporting, which we'll get onto a little bit later. And as I said, there must be a legal entity in China and have a Chinese business license covering cosmetic import and sales. Just some other more broad points about what the DRA does. They apply for and manage the NMPA online account, which is an important step. We'll come on to this. They also therefore deal with the filing certificate and receive it, or the registration certificate, and they also deal with management of consignee and import province. They convey relevant regulation updates to the foreign manufacturer and coordinate and import the maintenance of sales records in China, which means management of the Chinese label, customs clearance support, and keeping charge of customs and sales records in China. So what are your options for a DRA? Foreign manufacturers have three options: their own subsidiary in China, a distributor, or a third party, independent third party. The own subsidiary is an elegant option, but it is more onerous in terms of cost and time to set up. And it also requires this QMS system in place. The distributor is quite a popular option, but we always caution our customers to really be aware of the risks of having your distributor as your DRA, because then A, they have de facto exclusivity, and B, they also receive lots of confidential information which you need to supply in order that you can submit your registration or filing. In addition, they will need to interact with, if you have any other distributors. So because China is such a large country, of course, you often need multiple distributors, not only for for the whole country, but often for even individual provinces or cities, in fact. So it's just something to really be aware of. If you do elect to have your distributor as your DRA, then make sure you have a very positive and strong relationship. Otherwise, you can have issues down the track, especially because they control the online account. It can be difficult to change. Or you can opt for a third-party independent consulting firm like ourselves. Cisema operates as a DRA for many of our customers. This is a neutral partner responsible for the registration that doesn't do any distribution themselves. They don't have these conflicts of interest. You can maintain your independence, and also allows you much more easily to use several distributors at the same time. Also, there's a knowledge process here. There's a knowledge resource that with relating to updates and regulatory affairs matters, as we're talking about here. There are many changes all the time.
Just for your information, actually, foreign companies can appoint more than just one DRA. They can have multiple DRAs, but each product can only have one DRA. I hope that makes sense. So let's assume a company produces 3 products. They could technically have a different DRA for each of them. And it is possible to change a DRA, but because the DRA is involved in this change process,
it can be difficult.
It can be difficult. Now let's speak about the registration process. Remember, registration is for special cosmetics. It starts with the DRA application and the NMPA account opening. And because this whole process takes around 2 months, it's good to do something in parallel, and this would be the evaluation and analysis of the packaging as well as the formula, and to see if they comply with China requirements. In some cases, if the packaging violates certain Chinese requirements, or the formula includes ingredients, or not even that, if, for instance, the ingredient that's mentioned on the packaging it uses a different term. It means the same ingredient, but nevertheless, it's worthwhile to change the packaging in advance. In some cases, this is something that has to be actually done before proceeding with the registration process. After the sample list is determined, the samples are transported into China. This takes approximately 2 weeks, including customs clearance, and then the sample testing starts. Depending on the type of special cosmetics and certain other factors, the sample testing takes 4 to 8 months. And in the meantime, you already collect important registration documents. After this, you prepare and submit the registration files not only online, but also on site. And I would say this takes another 2 weeks. After this, the NMPA conducts their so-called format review. This format review is kind of like a bureaucratic review. They look at the application dossier and see if all the necessary documents have been provided. There are 3 potential outcomes. The first one is passed. If this is the case, it takes 5 working days for you to receive the acceptance notice. Then there's failed and the supplementary notice. Failing this is very unusual. So let's assume you have received your acceptance notice. After an additional 3 working days, the NMPA starts their technical review. And as the name suggests, this is the technical review of the actual documents which the NMPA performs. This takes 90 working days. And again, there are 3 possible outcomes. This would be the supplementary notice, the pass, or the fail. So let's start with the supplementary notice. This is quite common. The NMPA requests additional information to be submitted. Please note, you have to submit these additional documents within 90 working days. Very important to not miss this deadline. And then it feeds back into the technical review again. Then let's assume you pass the technical review. There's one more bureaucratic step. The administrative review, here this takes another 20 working days and another 10 days for you to receive your certificate. The NMPA will also disclose the relevant information online. This will be publicly visible, and this takes 5 days. And then you're able to import your products and sell them in China. It's very unlikely that the products fail, but I'm just going to...
At the NMPA administrative review stage?
No, here actually. It's very unlikely that the technical review fails and that you then receive a decision letter of disapproval. And if this is the case, then you have 20 working days to object and apply for a recheck. But again, this is very unlikely. The total duration is between 14 and 18 months. This is based on our experience as well as based on the newly implemented government timelines that you can see on the slides.
Yeah, just to clarify one thing, although it may be unusual to receive a fail notice, that doesn't mean that there won't be more supplementary notices issued. So this is the way that the NMPA is unlikely to give you a fail. They're more likely to just ask further questions.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is what the certificate looks like. It has a big red stamp. It has a validity date of 5 years for a special cosmetic. It also has various product details in a general outline and in a one-page setting.
Now, with regards to the filing process, so this is relevant for general cosmetics. Again, it starts with the DRA application and the NMPA account opening. Similar to the registration, it takes 2 months, and the packaging and formula should be analyzed for China conformity. After the sample transport, the sample are tested. Here, note that the sample tests for general cosmetics are much shorter. They're on average 2.5 months. And after the collection of the registration files, the application dossier is submitted in the online system. Actually, the computer pretty much automatically auto-generates an electronic certificate, and the information disclosure follows in 5 days. And this allows you to import and sell your products into China. Now, you will have probably noticed now that there's no administrative or technical review after submission of the application dossier anymore. So after submission of the application documents, the electronic certificate is generated automatically. Therefore, there is now post-market supervision. And this is actually in line with more general developments in China of the NMPA, and also we see this in other product categories. For instance, in the medical device area, the NMPA is putting a lot more focus on the product life cycle and post-market supervision. And I just want to mention here that after the product is filed, the NMPA and supervision department will also conduct a post-filing review of the product, and there is the possibility of severe punishments of violations. So it is important that any information required by the applicants, of course, must be truthful and submitted in line with the requirements. And if the application documents do not meet the requirements, it is possible that the license is suspended. The total duration is 4 to 5 months. Again, this is based on our personal experience as well as the newly implemented government timelines.
And this is what the certificate looks like for a general cosmetic, as the product name and basic information. It does not have a validity date or expiry date because it is valid indefinitely.
Now, at the beginning of every project, we provide our clients with a document checklist. And it looks like there's a lot of documents on the slide, but in fact, there are even more documents needed for the application, especially for account application. And it is us or registration agents that are responsible for the preparation of the related documents according to the materials provided by our clients. And also there are other third parties involved, for instance, the test report that is written by the test laboratory, and also documents that are created by the notary and so on. But here, these are the documents that are needed from the applicant. So 1 to 14 shows you all the necessary documents needed for online account application. And what you can see here with color coding, in blue, letter of authorization, power of attorney. Here the notarized originals are needed. These are the documents for DRA authorization and online account opening. And the ones in yellow are the ones where we need originals. Here, the GMP or quality standard certification material, this actually needs to be either an original or a notarized copy by a Chinese notary office or certified by a Chinese embassy or consulate. With regards to 15 to 17, these documents we ask our clients to provide before the sample tests. We need these documents for creating the sample list and preparing the files for testing. And last but not least, these documents are needed for the final submission. They are part of the essential filing and registration dossier.
And we often get asked now about the ID time. Perhaps you can explain a little bit more.
Yeah, of course. So here you can see items 6, 10, 11, 12, you'll see that the ID number of the person in charge of quality and safety of the registrant and filer, but also similarly the person in charge of quality and safety of the commission processing enterprise. This means if you have a
CMO, a contract.
Yeah, contract manufacturing agreement in place, the person in charge there also has to provide their ID number, and this has caused a couple of raised eyebrows and a lot of questions in the past for us already. So this is indeed a new requirement. Something that has changed recently is that the NMPA will also allow to submit only the last 6 digits of the ID number. So any digits that come before then can be
hashed or starred.
Hashed or starred. So this is a relatively new requirement. One thing I'd like to point out again that we always ask our clients beforehand is if you can really provide ISO or GMP or a similar certificate for quality standard, and also a free sales certificate here, number 19. Now, with regards to the application dossier, there are a couple of documents with regards to the formula that have to be submitted. So as part of the registration, you do need to disclose your product formula table, very detailed information, including the ingredient serial number, name, concentration, and purpose of use. As well, and this is quite new, the ingredient manufacturer information and ingredient safety information. There are some transitional measures in place. Since May this year, you have to submit the trade name of each raw material supplier, of each raw material, and also the supplier name. Starting from January next year, certain ingredient safety information has to be submitted, but this is only applicable to particular high-risk ingredients. And then starting from January 2023, the ingredient submission code has to be submitted. This is a new concept. This is actually the raw material supplier's job. So the submission is in Chinese, so he will probably need support for that. But it will be the ingredient supplier who has to put in the ingredient submission code, and for this submit a lot of documentation. The online platform for this is not yet launched, so we still have to wait a couple of months. But this ingredient submission code will be automatically generated after the ingredient manufacturer submits the ingredient safety information through the online platform. And after submission, this ingredient submission code will be disclosed by the NMPA together with the ingredient trade name and manufacturer information. And here you can see a very high-level summary of the types of documents that will have to be provided with regards to the ingredient safety information that has to be provided. Let's continue. So I have mentioned in the flowchart diagram earlier that type tests have to be done, and there are a lot of different types of type tests. So microbiological tests, physical and chemical tests, and toxicology tests. Toxicology tests are animal tests. They are the basic tests which basically cover all products and they take a couple of months, maybe 2-3 months or so. The human safety inspection or human safety tests are mainly related to special products, which will have different requirements according to the claims of the product. Some general cosmetics will in future also be affected by this. For instance, special anti-wrinkle or rinse-off products. And last but not least, efficacy evaluation tests. Again, this will vary greatly according to the different product claims.
Yeah, in terms of test samples, what you need to provide is not just dummy packaging. It needs to be, the samples need to be as if they're ready for sale, with carton packaging, insert, bottle, and so on. They also must be manufactured, all the samples must be manufactured on the same date, ideally with the same batch number, and should not be close to expiration. Usually recommend our customers to ensure the product has at least a year or a year and a half leeway before expiration. In terms of the number of sample quantities, a good rule of thumb is for general cosmetics you'll need 30 samples, and special you will need 50. For all the testing, the precondition here is that each sample contains 20 mL or more.
Now, I've already addressed it very briefly earlier, animal testing. This is something that everyone will want to hear about. In the past, there were 3 channels. Already general trade, which requires registration and filing prior to import, and this meant animal testing are needed. Then there was cross-border e-commerce, which is basically the online sales approach, business to consumer. Direct sale does not require filing or registration. Therefore, in the past, it didn't need animal testing. And then there is domestically produced products. So if a product, a general cosmetic, I have to say, is produced in China, then it does not need animal testing. Special Chinese products also need animal testing. But with the introduction of the CSAR on January 1st this year, there is now a way to avoid toxicology test, animal test, by applying for an animal test exemption. And I'm gonna go into more detail on the next slide. Yeah, so how do you qualify for this? So on March 4th, the NMPA released the provisions for the management of cosmetics registration and filing. And in these provisions, they list the conditions to roll out the exemption for submitting the toxicology test report, the animal test. First, it has to be a general cosmetic. Also, overseas manufacturer will be required to present a product safety assessment report. And last but not least, a GMP certificate or comparable certification of quality management system has to be issued by a local competent authority of the country where the applicant or the manufacturer is located. This is very important. It has to be the local competent authority. Now, this is of course great news, but there are some preconditions, and the exemption from animal test may not apply if the product is intended for children, if the product contains new ingredients which are still under their 3-year monitoring period, or if the NMPA has got you on their supervision list and they watch you closely because you have a bad credit. With regards to product safety assessment, this is a newly added mandatory requirement. You can also entrust someone to write it for you. And from the 1st of January next year, This report will be needed when newly applying anyways, but if you want to avoid animal testing, you already have to provide this now. And for your information, right now the simplified version is sufficient, but starting 2024, you have to, write the full product safety assessment reports. There are some requirements that the regulator in China has set out with regards to the cosmetic safety assessor, the person basically writing this report. They have to have extensive professional knowledge of this includes medical, pharmacy, biology, chemistry, or toxicology, and other cosmetic quality and safety related knowledge. And they have to be able to understand the production process and quality and safety control requirements of finished cosmetics products, as well as ingredients. And they have to have 5 years of the relevant professional experience in the field. This is important that the person that's writing your product safety assessment report fulfills these requirements. I'm aware that in the EU, similar safety reports have been around for a while. The EU safety report will surely be helpful, but will have to be written new according to the Chinese requirements. Nevertheless, European companies surely will be able to adapt to this easier than Chinese companies, because Chinese companies, to them, this is a completely new concept. And now I'd like to go into a bit more detail or mention again about the GMP certificate. So a GMP that was issued by an industry association or another third party is accepted, of course, for the normal filing of general cosmetics, but not if you want to avoid animal testing. If you want to avoid animal testing, it has to be issued by a competent government authority of the country. And I am aware that in France and some US states and Israel, this is already possible. Other countries will take a little bit more time to adapt to this new requirement.
So we're going to move on to the label required. For imported cosmetics, 2 options are available. You have the Chinese label affixed on the original packaging with a sticker, or you have an original Chinese packaging artwork designed specifically for the China market. On June 3rd, 2021, the NMPA released the administrative measures on cosmetics labeling, which will be implemented in a number of phases, and it sets out some new additional requirements as to cosmetics labeling. In addition to the name and address of the applicant, DRAs and production enterprises will be required for labeling, and all of them can be displayed if more than one are involved. Not only the outer packaging, but also the smallest innermost packaging unit that are in direct contact with the contents will require a Chinese label. If the inner packaging is very small, at least the Chinese name of the product and product expiration dates must be indicated. In addition to the ingredient list, specific ingredients that do not exceed 0.1% of the product formula should be listed. Instructions for use must be displayed on the Chinese label. So NMPA encourages companies to design new product labels in accordance with this new measure from now, although it is voluntary until April 30th of next year. For new registrations and filings, for applicants registered before May 2022 that have not used this new system, they will need to supplement and provide the relevant label requirements after May 1st, 2023.
And just so you know, any samples or gifts, they must also be marked in accordance with the new labeling law. If products have been produced and the labels have been produced before the mandatory start, as listed here in the slide, they continue to be allowed to be sold in China. But anything that is basically produced after this, they have to comply with the new cosmetics labeling measures. But the NMPA actually encouraged everyone to already do this now. Now, with regards to the Chinese label, briefly, I'm going to walk you through the things that have to be mentioned: the product name, the name and address of the applicant. If this is a foreign applicant, then also the address and name of the DRA, the name and address of the production enterprise. If it isn't the same, it's obviously a different one if you do contract manufacturing. The certificate number, net content, ingredient list, product expiration date. Again, this can be shown in different styles, for instance, manufacturing date and shelf life, or production batch number and date of expiry. And as Hamish mentioned earlier, also the inner packaging units have to display the expiration date, and they can do this in form of manufacturing date and period after opening. The instruction for use, very important, and also safety warnings and statements. The label should comply with China's relevant laws, administrative regulations, and mandatory national standards. I mean, that is pretty obvious. There are some things that are prohibited. Of course, I think everyone would agree that, of course, you shouldn't include anything misleading or false descriptions, but also you should definitely not have any medical effects. No matter if you implicitly or explicitly imply them, medical claims have nothing, are not allowed on Chinese label. Please note that the content of the Chinese label should be in line with the content of the original packaging and with other documents, such as those related to product safety and efficacy claims. If the original packaging, as it is sold in the country of origin, has some discrepancy, you cannot just put a sticker on top of it to cover that information. The original packaging must be compliant under Chinese cosmetics regulation. Now, a new development is with regards to efficacy claims that are indicated on the label, and this is being rolled out in steps for product efficacy claims that have been validated by human trial efficacy tests. These can be indicated with the words evaluated and validated, and for product claims with efficacy of an ingredient, the efficacy claim shall be in line with the purpose of use of the ingredient, and of course the correct dose of that ingredient has to actually be reached in the product.
So regarding efficacy evaluation, this is a requirement under the new CSAR where an evaluation of efficacy claims will need to be submitted. And we set out a little timeline here again as to implementation. From 1st of January 2022, new applications shall submit efficacy claims. Until May next year, products registered between May this year and the end of this year, December, they need to file supplementary efficacy claim reports. And until 1st of January 2021, 1st of May 2021, products just registered for May shall supplement their efficacy claims. From May 2023, you also then need to supply a full supplemental efficacy evaluation report for products that have not yet done so.
There is some difficulty with regards to efficacy evaluation right now because the novelty of the requirements, the industry has to familiarize itself with the new efficacy evaluation requirements.
It's still a bit unclear what is necessary, what is needed. And apart from anti-hair loss, whitening, and sunscreens, other claims don't actually have clear standards yet and no clear review scale.
Here in this slide, I want to show you the different efficacy claims in the first row, and also the different evaluation principles that apply. So in many cases, it is not clear where the efficacy tests have to be done, but we know that for anti-hair loss and freckle removing, which is whitening, and sunscreens, a human trial has to be done in an NMPA accredited lab in China. For anti-acne, repair, and nourishing claims, human trials, I believe, according to the regulation, should also be accepted if they are done in international institutions as well. Then as we move forward into this direction, you see more and more other evaluation principles become available. So for instance, for a tier-free formula, you can also utilize consumer user tests. And then for anti-wrinkle and oil control products, all the products that I'm mentioning here, you can also use laboratory tests or literature. Please note, I've tried to make a little distinction between these two. Literature can be a supportive principle for anti-wrinkle products and the sole solution for instance, moisturizing and hair care. Yeah, this is just something I wanted to highlight.
So, and as mentioned already, that NMPA is moving towards a whole of product lifecycle review approach, and that is specifically represented in cosmetics relating to the post-market supervision focus by the NMPA department. This includes random inspections of filing dossiers on import and production, and potentially on-site inspections of overseas enterprises when necessary. So an on-site audit may be triggered by an adverse event or report. Possible outcomes could be prohibition on sale in China, and some of the reasons for this include missing required test items or reports and other items as we've set out on the slide. Another possible outcome could be conduct credit record, which effectively means that the specific company has a mark against its name and will be more closely watched in future. There is still some further clarifications needed for the post-market supervision, so watch this space. There is, however, clarity that for general cosmetics, annual reports will now be required every year from 1st January next year. They need to be submitted from 1st January to March 31st of each year, and it's recommended that companies prepare as soon as possible and screen products in advance to ensure that your product will be compliant with this regard. Similar information to be submitted is already part of the special cosmetic renewal application every 5 years.
Now I'd like to mention also to you that there is also a thing called change application, meaning that if there's any changes, whether it be account information related or product information related, that trigger change application. So it is necessary to keep the regulator in China updated on any changes. So for instance, if your address changes, or if you would like to change the DRA, of course, or if you want to change the product packaging. It's important to keep the NMPA in the loop. If you filed your general cosmetic before November 2018, you can't apply for change application because this was done in such an old system that you instead have to apply for a new filing.
For renewals, this is for special cosmetics, which have 5-year expiry. The renewal application is submitted within 30 to 90 working days before expiry and takes about 15 working days. Approval, once approved, is backdated or set from the previous expiration date, so there's no break in time. As to the documents required, they are set out on the bottom of the slide here. Obviously the application form as well as various supporting documents. If a special cosmetic was registered prior to the CSAR, then the CRA or China Registration Agent, as it was known for special cosmetics, that's now called the DRA, will need to submit the DRA application on a new platform. So if you want to apply for a DRA change, first submit a DRA change application, as it cannot be submitted at the same time, and then you go through your renewal process.
Whether an ingredient is already used in China, you can find out by looking at the IECIC, the Inventory of Existing Cosmetics Ingredients in China. And the CSAR, this new law in China, talks not only about cosmetics products, but actually a lot about new cosmetics ingredients. So if a cosmetics ingredient is not yet listed in the IECIC, it requires a filing or a registration to be used in cosmetics. And please do not confuse this with the ingredient submission code. The ingredient submission code I mentioned earlier, this is the ingredient supplier's responsibility, and this is something that becomes relevant in the coming years. The new cosmetic ingredient filing or registration is for ingredients that have never been used in cosmetics in China before. And revolutionarily, the NMPA groups them into high risk and medium and low risk ingredients, and they undergo a slightly different procedure. High risk ingredients would be, for instance, preservatives or sunscreen agents or whitening agents, and medium risk would be, for instance, like an anti-hair loss or anti-wrinkle ingredient. Nevertheless, both medium and low risk undergo the filing process. And this is a much easier process. After the submission, the ingredients can be used in cosmetics, and they enter a 3-year monitoring period. And after this period, the ingredient is either added to the IECIC, this official ingredient list in China, or the certificate is suspended. And in the last 2 slides, I have included, and this is something like an appendix or a source information resources, basically all the regulations, the work leading up to the CSAR, everything that happened before 1st of January, and on the next slide, the release of CSAR subsidiary regulations until mid of June.
It shows there's been quite an exercise and update in the regulatory framework. Well, that's our webinar for today. We have a couple of minutes left for Q&A, but conscious of the time, do we have any questions? If so, please submit them into the chat box now. And we also have our colleague Jeff on the line who can support us as well. Our contact details are on the bottom of the slide, and we also have a regulatory monthly newsletter. Please sign up on our website.
And if you're interested in potentially a quotation or full cost calculation for cosmetics registration or filing, just contact us and send us the layouts of your products, and we will assist you with that and for any other questions you may have.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day. Please keep Cisema in mind and get in touch.